The camera's pointed to me. See? The camera's pointed to from there to here. So there's nothing. You would need to walk directly behind me. Yeah. Yeah. You'll be okay.
Oh no, it actually is going blue.
Is it actually blue? No shot.
Biden's down by 8,000 in Michigan.
Wait, in Michigan?
In Michigan. In Michigan.
Wait, are you sure?
I don't
No,
see
I
that.
miscounted. I miscounted my delusion. Sorry, guys.
No, Nevada's done. Let's move
Wait,
on.
yeah, let's move on
I
for
like
Nevada.
No, it's not, dude. Nevada just came within a 11,000 vote.
Wait,
I
what?
told you guys, Nevada's gonna flip, dude. Yeah.
This might be too late for me to cash out.
Yeah.
Either stoked or pissed, huh?
It's gonna be some.
I can't
crazy
fucking
shit.
wait, dude. Oh god, the memes.
We have on
Oh no, it actually is going blue.
Let's get to Jim Sciutto at the voting desk. He has the latest on the lawsuits being filed by the Trump campaign in multiple battleground states. Jim.
Well, John, I don't have to tell you this, and of course viewers will be familiar. The Trump campaign filed a lot of lawsuits before this election, primarily dealing with voter access. Lost most of those. They're filing a lot of lawsuits since the election, and these deal mostly with the vote count, particularly in states that are close, that Trump is behind, believe they may be able to catch up. So let's go state by state here. And I should note, as I go through these, that CNN has talked to a lot of legal experts on these cases, and in general they say unlikely to be wins for the Trump campaign. One, evidence is thin to this point. Two, most of them deal with cases where the number of votes is too small to sway the outcome. But they're happening. Let's talk about Pennsylvania first. The lawsuits here focusing on, you may remember, just before the election, law passed in Pennsylvania allowed votes that arrive up to 3 days after Election Day to be counted, mail-in votes. That was challenged before. Supreme Court let that law stand, but conservative justices left the door open to the possibility of perhaps some of those quote-unquote late-arriving ballots are enough to turn the election. Could there be some questions here? A possibility. So big question in Pennsylvania on that is, what is the margin? What is the number of those that arrive after Election Day? That's the lawsuit in Pennsylvania right now. Let's look at Michigan. Here, the Trump campaign filed a lawsuit asking to halt the counting of votes statewide. Why? They are demanding what they're calling meaningful access to observe the processing, in particular, of mail-in ballots there. Of course, Michigan has been called by this network and others, but Trump campaign wants to halt the counting there. Let's go on to Nevada. This state has not been called yet, and we may be getting more data there later today. Keep in mind, before I go down the details of this lawsuit, that Republicans tried this past twice already and failed, but 3 times the charm, they hope. They're going after it again. The focus here is looking at signature matching software used in that state to match signatures on ballots that come in. It uses some artificial intelligence. That's the basis of their claim there, and what they're demanding is to stop counting there as that issue is adjudicated. Finally, let's look at Georgia here, another state, as you were just saying, John, with Phil, extremely tight margins here, and that's why you're seeing a lawsuit pop up. And this one deals with an extremely small number of ballots, which Republicans say these were ballots that were still being processed, somehow ended up in a pile of ballots ready to be tabulated. That's their focus there. Like the other lawsuits, they deal with such a small number of votes, unlikely to turn things there, but they're pursuing. Remember, this is a president who likes to file lawsuits on a whole host of things. They tried it before the election, mostly on voter access, lost most of those cases. They're trying after the election. It's a close one, and they're pushing these hard. I should note, just before I came on air, another lawsuit filed in the state of Pennsylvania by the Trump campaign. This one deals with 2 issues, the issue of poll watchers there and voter ID laws. The Trump campaign claiming in this lawsuit that there was an attempt here, in their words, to disenfranchise Republican voters. So add that to the bin of lawsuits in the state of Pennsylvania there. Again, big picture, we expected these lawsuits to happen. The legal experts CNN has been talking to say evidence thin, number of votes too small to affect the outcome, but there are lots of them here. And as we've watched in the last several months, sometimes the courts can surprise. John, we'll keep on top.
Jim Sciutto, terrific work. One point you made that I think is worth repeating. The margins matter here. If you're dealing with tens of thousands of votes in the margin there, lawsuits almost never make any kind of difference. So that's what we're watching in several states. Michigan, by the way, is a 100,000 vote difference right now for Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden in the lead there, so unlikely any lawsuit would make a difference there. Jim, thank you. Let's go over to Allison Camerata now here in New York.
Okay, John, let's stay on the topic of those lawsuits and get some analysis from two CNN election law analysts and experts. We have Rick Goldes, professor of constitutional law at NYU School of Law, and Jonathan Diaz, who serves as legal counsel for the Campaign Legal Center. Great to have both of you. Okay, so Jonathan, you heard Jim Sciutto lay out all of those different lawsuits right now. President Trump's campaign has launched this slew of challenges in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada, Georgia, Wisconsin. Are there any that you just heard Jim lay out that you think do have merit and will move forward?
Not really. I think Jim's summary was, pretty much on target. These lawsuits don't appear, at least to me, to have a particularly high chance of success, and even if they did, they're not dealing with the kinds of numbers of ballots or the types of issues that are likely to be outcome determinative in any of these states. The one possible exception is that Pennsylvania lawsuit that is already before the Supreme Court, dealing with those late arriving ballots and that deadline extension. But again, it's going to come down to what the ultimate margin is in Pennsylvania before those late arriving ballots are counted, and if there are enough ballots that arrive between the end of the day on November 3rd and the deadline tomorrow for that to make a difference. And as of right now, we just don't know.
Right, we don't. We will be speaking to the governor there soon, though, and hopefully getting some information. But Rick, let's zero in on Pennsylvania, because even before all of that litany of legal challenges, you had some real concerns that Pennsylvania could be the center of chaos. So what was it about Pennsylvania's voting process that caused you so much concern?
Well, there are a bunch of things that come together here. I had said that Pennsylvania is sort of the worst combination of a potentially decisive state with not such great election law policies. Number one, the fact that they couldn't start processing these ballots until Election Day. Number two, not clear enough guidance provided in advance about certain key issues, which should have been done. We knew if it came down to Pennsylvania, there would be kind of messy issues here. I do agree, though, that the litigation so far, it does not seem likely to, A, affect enough ballots, and B, be all that likely to succeed. The suit against Pennsylvania is the most serious one legally, the one about this 3-day window. But I expect the number of ballots that actually come in that last 3 days is going to be a lot smaller than many people might think. People got their votes in early.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it, but we will see, and we'll try to get those exact numbers. But Jonathan, whether or not you think that these have merit, do they slow down the counting, and do they tie up somehow the results?
They can. If election officials have to be the ones to respond to these lawsuits and to give the facts to, state or county attorneys who have to reply to these complaints and these briefs, they shouldn't stop or slow down the counting absent some court order, and so far we haven't seen anything like that. But they do put additional strain on election officials who are working very hard, as we've seen already this morning, to finish these counts so that we can get closer to a final resolution.
Rick, how about recounts? Are those automatically triggered because the margins are so narrow in some places?
So that varies from state to state. In Wisconsin, the candidate can request a recount if the margin is under 1%, and the president's team has done that already. In other states, there are automatic recounts that are triggered if the margin is within, for example, 0.5%. It's possible we're going to have automatic recounts in a couple of these states. Recounts rarely change votes by anything other than a very kind of tiny margin, a few hundred votes here and there. Recounts don't affect thousands of votes, let alone tens of thousands of votes.
Okay, Rick Goldes, Jonathan Diaz, thank you both very much. Let's go back to how the map looks with John Berman.
More than 24 hours after Election Day, we still have no clear winner in this presidential race. But Joe Biden is ahead in electoral votes, leading President Trump 253 to 213. We are paying special attention today to Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. If he wins any two of those, he will get to 270. That's the numbers you know required for victory. Biden is also way ahead in the popular vote with more than, listen to this number, over 71 million people. That's the most of any presidential candidate in history.
We are also tracking different reactions from the candidates. President Trump is suggesting there has been fraud without any evidence, and he's also making legal challenges. By contrast, former Vice President Joe Biden is calling for patience. Ed Peak is following all of this. Ed, good morning to you. What do the numbers tell you this morning?
Well, good morning, Tony. Right now, Arizona and Nevada are leaning towards former Vice President Biden. And with those electoral votes, he would be right at the 270 needed to win. He wouldn't even need Pennsylvania. The Biden-Harris campaign is feeling so confident, it's already launched its presidential transition website.
I'm not here to declare that we've won, but I am here to report when the count is finished, we believe we will be the winners.
Speaking in Wilmington, Delaware, former Vice President Joe Biden said he believes he's on the verge of history.
I'm very proud of our campaign. Only 3 presidential campaigns in the past have defeated an incumbent president. When it's finished, God willing, we'll be the 4th.
Biden's chances of reaching 270 electoral votes dramatically improved with projected wins in Wisconsin and Michigan on Wednesday. And he delivered the same message he's been running on since he announced his candidacy.
So once this election is finalized and behind us, it'll be time for us to do what we've always done as Americans. To put the harsh rhetoric of the campaign behind us, to lower the temperature, to see each other again, to listen to one another.
But President Trump isn't backing down. While he had no public events on Wednesday, he took to Twitter to make multiple misleading and false statements. He claimed victories in Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, and Michigan. This, despite evidence to the contrary in Michigan and no official race calls yet in the other states. The president's campaign is also launching legal challenges in Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and is demanding a recount in Wisconsin. The Trump campaign strategy has been contradictory. On the one hand, in states the president's trailing in, like Arizona, they say the number of votes yet to be counted will put the president ahead of Biden. But in states where the president is ahead, like Pennsylvania, the campaign wants the votes to stop being counted. Mr. Trump dispatched his son and members of his legal team to the Keystone State on Wednesday, where more than 760,000 cast ballots have not yet been counted.
It's not fair. This isn't democracy.
They want the U.S. Supreme Court to stop Pennsylvania from counting mail-in ballots received by Friday, even if they were postmarked on Election Day. The High Court previously refused to do so. The dueling strategy by the Trump campaign is trickling down to the president's supporters. In Detroit, protesters chanted outside a ballot processing center as the Trump campaign sued to stop the count of ballots in Michigan until they say election observers are given better access. But election officials say that challengers from both parties were already inside the room. In Georgia, the Trump campaign is suing to ensure votes by mail received after 7 p.m. on Election Day are not counted. The lawsuit alleges a Republican poll watcher witnessed a poll worker bring a stack of ballots from a back room and mix them with ballots to be counted. As with the rest of the legal challenges, however, there's been no evidence provided by the Trump campaign.
So typically ballots are kept in other rooms before they are then processed depending on state law. It's not unusual. And there's accusations here that sound like something that they are not.
Sounds like it's nefarious.
Yes,
It is not.
It's all going to be sorted out, and there are poll watchers from both parties observing. Most of these Secretary of State offices have bipartisanship built into them.
Yeah, that's right.
You should know that.
And this is a process we don't typically see because races aren't typically this close.
Yeah.
But counting does go on after Election Day. Yeah. Quite normally.
That's
Ed,
right.
Thank you.
The Trump campaign is also calling for a recount in Wisconsin. Former Governor Scott Walker is casting doubt about whether that would be enough to help President Trump change the outcome in that very crucial battleground state. The Republican tweeted yesterday that Joe Biden's 20,000 vote lead is, quote, a high hurdle, but later tweeted this: an error in reporting could change that, and said that he does support a recount in Wisconsin. Former Governor Scott Walker joins us now to discuss. Good morning to you, Governor Walker. Really good to see you again.
Good morning. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
We're glad you're here. Let's start with, 99% of the votes are in your state. There is a 20,000 difference. Do you think that he could actually overcome that?
Well, with millions of votes cast, we're talking about less than 1%, about 0.7% of the vote is the difference between the two candidates. And as you just alluded to, it's about 21,000 votes. So right now, today, if nothing else changed, that is indeed a high hurdle. Typically in the past, we saw a recount 4 years ago in the presidential election. It swung about, I think the president gained about 131 votes. 9 years ago in the state Supreme Court race, the swing was about 300 votes. So typically hundreds, not thousands of votes shift in an election statewide. Having said that, that same Supreme Court election years ago in the canvass, which is still going on and won't be done until at least 14 days after the election for the local entities. And then on December 1st, all of the state canvass is done. At that point, you did have in that Supreme Court race a switch of thousands of votes when they actually found votes that had not been added to the tally. That's why I said be ready for a recount, but wait till after the canvass.
You know, the Trump campaign is claiming irregularities. They've mentioned the word fraud when it comes to voting in your state. What do you have to say about that? When you hear that, what do you think?
Well, there are a number of concerns. For example, there are some wards in the city of Milwaukee where there were as many as 200% voters voted 200%, I should say, of what the previous registered voters are. Now, to be clear, in Wisconsin, we have same-day voter registration. So it is clearly possible that you had a surge because many of those wards not only did Democrats vote, so you had unprecedented attention by the president's campaign in the African-American community in Milwaukee. So in some of those wards, which are predominantly African-American, there could have been that kind of an increase, but I think it's worth at least checking in to make sure those numbers match up with people
But have
who
you seen
registered
any
on that
evidence
day.
of fraud, Governor Walker? Have you seen any evidence or heard?
No.
Okay. All right.
I have not. I'd say no matter what ward you're in, if it's 200% of the people who are registered, I think that raises a red flag, whether it's in the city, the suburbs, or in a small town in Wisconsin. And that's the sort of thing you find in the canvas as you check to make sure the numbers add up. Because typically, when you have problems out there, it's not corruption, it's somebody made an error. This may not be an error, but you need to at least check into things like that.
So, Governor Walker, I want to talk about the possibility of an error, because under the rules there in Wisconsin, the candidate who wants a recount has to pay for it. That means donations, that means real money from real people who may not have it to spare. So is there any record that you've seen of an error in reporting large enough to actually change the outcome in Wisconsin?
Closest you got in 2011 was about 14,000 votes. That shot to 21,000, but it's at least in that ballpark. And obviously, it would depend on what part of the state it came in. In that case, it came in out of the city of Brookfield, which was a very Republican-leaning community in a very Republican county. And that did sway the outcome of the election. I don't know that there's an example of that out there, but it's at least what I said is take a breath. Let's look at the canvas. Let's not declare a winner until the canvases are complete. And once that's done, if there's a big margin out there, then it is indeed difficult to go over that kind of a hurdle.
Governor, 4 years ago, President Trump flipped Wisconsin from blue to red. If former Vice President Joe Biden holds on to this 20,000, 21,000 vote margin, why do you think he will have succeeded in flipping it back?
Well, I've just said all along, this is going to be razor thin. 4 years ago, the president won Wisconsin, but by less than 50%, by just really a hair of a distinction between him and Hillary Clinton. It looks like it's going to be about the same percentage, which is why every vote that's legally cast should be counted in Wisconsin and across the country.
Well, what do you think changed politically, Governor Walker, from this, from Wisconsin going from a red state, with a Republican governor there, to a state with, I believe it's a Democratic governor, and now potentially Joe Biden carrying it in the presidential race?
Well, it's always been close. You had the vote for governor 2 years ago was about 1% difference. Statewide, you have significant Republican majorities in both houses of the legislature. You have 5 of the 8 members of Congress are Republicans, and you have 1 Republican and 1 Democrat state senator. It's a typical battleground state. It's going to be close every single election. And you've had unprecedented turnout in many parts of the state of Wisconsin for both Joe Biden and for Donald Trump. And I think it's going to continue to be a battleground state going forward.
Yeah, Governor Walker, I actually think that's an important corrective there, because there were some polls going in suggesting there was a wider margin, and it turned out to be the case. And that little history lesson there from you, I think, is a reminder of why. So thank you very much. We appreciate you getting up with us.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Welcome back to CBS This Morning and our continuing coverage of the 2020 election. Ballots are still being counted in 6 undecided states, and one of them is Arizona, where pro-Trump demonstrators gathered outside the building where votes are being counted in Phoenix. They claim that they are worried their votes will not be counted inside that building. Joe Biden is currently holding on to a narrow lead over the president in Arizona, and the state is likely to go to Biden. But at this point, CBS News is not going to project a winner. We're not comfortable doing so. We want more votes to be reported. That's what we're waiting on this morning. Officials there are still working to make it happen. And Arizona's Secretary of State Katie Hobbs joins us now. Secretary Hobbs, good morning to you. You happen to be a Democrat, but notable to point out that in your election in 2018, you were behind on Election Day and then came for the win with those votes counted the next day and the day after. So if anything, perhaps you're sympathetic to President Trump in his predicament. Everyone wants to know, how is the count going and when will it be done? So what can you tell us on that front?
Well, the count is going. That is what election officials across the state are spending day and night doing right now, is making sure that we're getting all of those outstanding ballots counted. By my really early calculations this morning, we're just under 450,000 outstanding ballots left across the state. The bulk of those, Maricopa County, just under 300,000. Maricopa County gave us an additional 100,000 or so, actually a little bit more than that yesterday. So if that's the pace they're going, I think we should have a good indicator of where we're at, late tomorrow. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that it's very narrow there in Arizona, and in the first batch of votes that came out last night, President Trump had the advantage, and some were suggesting he couldn't really make up this difference. From what you're seeing and where these votes are coming from, what kind of votes they are, do you think the president has a viable path and could win the state of Arizona?
Well, it's just really hard to say. The bulk of the ballots that are remaining to be tabulated are early ballots that were received by county election officials Monday or Tuesday. So they could be coming from anywhere in terms of geographical area. They still have to, they're in the process of being signature verified so that they can be tabulated. And I know that they're very focused on making sure that those get done. So every time we bug them for this data, like where are these ballots coming from, it keeps them from doing that. So it's really, really hard to say, these are the areas where these ballots are coming from, because people can drop their ballot off wherever it's convenient for them, and it doesn't necessarily indicate where they live.
Secretary Hobbs, let's talk about the protesters for just a second. We just saw them in the video before we came to you. Are you concerned that their presence will affect the ability for the people to continue with the counting? I would imagine that it could be very disconcerting.
Well, their presence, honestly, is a distraction. They're protesting to count the votes, and that is exactly what Maricopa County election officials are doing. I do know that they worked with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office to ensure that all the employees there were safe. I'm not sure their objective, but we're going to keep counting the ballots. That's what we're required to do by law.
In addition, we were hearing reports from members of Team Trump, including his son, that said that some of the ballots were filled with Sharpies, and that's a problem. I mean, it sounds so silly even asking you this question, but can you address Sharpie Gate if you could? What does that mean, and how is that shaping up?
Well, I've talked more about markers in the last couple of days than I hope to ever again in my life, but this is absolutely a non-issue. The election workers are not going to give voters pens that would intentionally invalidate their ballot. That is just absolutely unfounded. They were given them for specific reasons. The tabulators can read them. Even if the tabulators can't read your ballot, then we have ways to count them. Every single validly cast ballot, regardless of the pen that you use, is going to be counted.
Secretary Hobbs, the Trump campaign has brought legal challenges in other states to stop counting. Are you prepared in the event they do that in Arizona?
Absolutely, we're prepared, but quite honestly, there's no legal ground for us to stop counting ballots. We don't have a postmark deadline in Arizona. Our ballots have to be received by election day. Those are the votes we're counting. There's really no legal basis to stop counting.
Secretary Hobbs, just one quick question, I think to reassure people of what's going on in that room there in Phoenix. The protesters are concerned that there are markings, that the Sharpie could let the election workers know where the ballot may have come from and then throw out Trump votes. So what safeguards are in place? Is it a bipartisan situation inside that room to make sure there's no funny business?
Yes, there are observers from political parties allowed in the tabulation room. Additionally, every tabulation room across the state has cameras. Anyone can go online to the election office in any county and view the proceedings while they're happening.
Wow.
And that's all the time. So there, and I will remind people, these election workers are hired by the counties. They have to pass background checks. They are beholden to uphold the laws of the state, and there are criminal penalties associated with any kind of ballot tampering, which is what they are suggesting might be happening. It is not happening, and those standards are much higher for the employees than they would be.
Really important information there. Observers, background checks, cameras. That's got to reassure some people. Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
As all this news is coming in, most of it not seeming all that great for President Trump. Dana, you have some new reporting.
Well, I talked to a source familiar with President Trump's thinking who said that the president is down, obviously tired, which is understandable, but not feeling all that great, despite the public bluster that we've seen and heard from his campaign, from his children, that the president is seeing what's happening. He is seeing that in some of these key states that will determine whether he is president or not, his lead is shrinking. Or if Joe Biden is ahead, notwithstanding what we just saw, before that just happened, it's just not looking that good for the president. And the sense from the source that I spoke to is that the president is starting to see this slip away. That's the mood of the president. Now, could that change like this with changes in the votes? Of course. But it also kind of dovetails with some reporting that we had earlier from our colleague Kevin Liptak, who said the president is calling to allies, saying that he doesn't understand the strategy that his campaign is using to kind of have these lawsuits in various states. Why didn't they try this more aggressively before the votes were counted? So there's some hand-wringing going on behind the scenes while there is some, public bravado.
Yeah.
It's quite different.
And I don't blame him for being confused about his legal team's strategy, because it is a little confounding when you actually look at what is going on. We've been talking all night about the way in which the strategy is talking out of one side of their mouth in Arizona and in Nevada, and then out of another in Pennsylvania and Georgia and Michigan. So it is confusing. And earlier in the year, the president really did push his team and the RNC to have a very aggressive legal strategy. And I think he really had hoped that a lot of this stuff would be resolved before we got to this point. And much of it actually had been resolved and litigated in the courts, which is why you're seeing some of the legal challenges that they're putting out now are, as we've discussed, fairly thin. And so I'm not surprised to see that the president finds it to be a somewhat unconvincing case.
But do you think
for victory.
Do you think that his issue is that he's not finding their legal strategy now to be up to the standards that he wants, or he doesn't understand why they're not able to stop the counting of votes? I mean, that seems more like in keeping with Donald Trump. His legal team was fairly aggressively out there. I mean, they were trying to stop mail-in ballots in any number of states, including the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I mean, the problem is that just because he's president, he's not able just to stop mail-in ballots. He's not able just to stop the counting of ballots. I think, with all due respect, I think you're giving him a little bit too much credit.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit of both, that he wants to stop the ballots from being counted. But again, I'm sure he's not blind to the fact that these cases that are being brought are long shots.
Exactly.
I mean, they're just hard to...
But that's not his legal team's fault.
Well, no, it's not. But as we've been saying all night, they are throwing everything they can up against this wall. The president obviously wants to win. He wants the ballots to perhaps not be counted. But I think he, as someone who, as you pointed out, is very litigious, he understands that these cases are not as rock solid as he.
That's exactly right. I think that he's just, it sounds to me like he is just voicing his frustration. And the one thing he can hang it on right now, because it's the way that they are being active in the Trump campaign, is by the lawsuits right now. And because he actually has so much experience in the courts, maybe not in election law, but experience in the courts, that he is, seeing that the campaign is just kind of trying to find ways to publicly say, we don't believe this, we're going to challenge this, but it's not necessarily something that is really, he's not standing on firm ground.
But he doesn't have experience winning in courts. He has experience with completely frivolous lawsuits. Yeah. Well, let's table this for a second. I want to go to Caitlin Collins at the White House, who can give us some more insight into President Trump's frustrations about what's going on. Caitlin?
Well, it's so interesting to hear you guys talk about the legal strategy, because this legal strategy came about because after Fox News called Arizona for Joe Biden last night, something that we should note CNN has not done yet. I am told by sources that's when the president went into this kind of panic mode with aides after thinking that he was going to win and pull this off, that he started instructing them to start filing these lawsuits and start to pursuing litigation that we have seen play out all day. And so that is what campaign aides have really spent the day doing. And some have conceded, in part, Jake, it's so they can buy themselves more time as they are waiting on votes in places like Arizona to come in. The other thing the president has spent the day doing, since we have not seen him in person today, and the White House has called a lid, meaning we are not expecting any appearances from him, though we could hear from him, of course, on Twitter tonight, Jake, is angrily calling Republican governors, these people who he believes are his allies, as he is trying to will what is happening and what we are seeing playing out from actually happening. And that includes Doug Ducey of Arizona, Brian Kemp of Georgia, and Ron DeSantis of Florida, I'm told by sources. He has been angrily calling them because he is not happy with what he's seeing. Of course, Florida is a different situation. I think that's more of a venting situation from what I've understood so far, but that is what the president has spent his day doing. So he is angrily calling these Republican governors, but casting doubt on the legal strategy that he has told his own aides to pursue. And of course, if you talk to the campaign aides who are working on this, some of them obviously do not believe some of these lawsuits will be successful, but they feel basically like they've run out of options at this point. And when the president feels like he's backed into a corner, often throughout the decades of his life before he was even in office, his go-to strategy has been to sue or to file lawsuits or to try to mount some kind of legal challenge to stop what is happening from happening.
Thank you, Caitlin Collins. That's exactly what I thought was going on. The idea that he's waging these frivolous lawsuits because he's telling them to do it. Anyway, Caitlin, thank you so much. Let's go to Arlette Saenz, who's with the Biden team in Wilmington, Delaware. What are you hearing from Team Biden, Arlette? There's obviously still a narrowing race in Arizona. We don't know what's happening in Nevada, a narrowing race in Pennsylvania, and, of course, in Georgia.
Well, Jake, they are closely watching these results coming in Arizona, but at this point, they are still projecting confidence about his standing in that state. The Biden campaign acknowledges that the margin could tighten in a county like Maricopa County, but they don't expect that his current standing will be overcome, even as the Trump campaign has pushed that narrative over the course of the day. Now, Arizona and Nevada, another state the Biden campaign is looking to hold on to. Those are states that Joe Biden only visited once as the Democratic nominee, which is quite the contrast to the time and resources he devoted to those blue walls he was trying to reclaim this time around. Now, the Biden campaign started the day projecting confidence about that blue wall, the Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And at this point, they have had 2 of those 3 states called in their favor. Now, heading and looking forward to Pennsylvania, the Biden campaign says they still remain confident as those votes continue to be counted, and say that they will remain vigilant about ensuring that every last vote is counted in that state.
All right, Arlette Saenz, thank you so much in Wilmington, Delaware. And we should also talk about the fact that I do, and I'm sure you do, expect Arizona to narrow. I mean, I do think that margin of victory, which is
it started to.
What is it?
And now it's like a little more than right there. You go, 50.7 to 47.9.
Yeah, and the Biden campaign, they also expected to narrow, but they believe that he will win. So yeah, it's not going to be a blowout in Arizona, but the question is, can President Trump make it up with the votes that are outstanding?
Tonight, the final hours until Election Day. The candidates in the battlegrounds on the last day of the campaign. Donald Trump holding 5 rallies in 4 states. Joe Biden concentrating on critical Pennsylvania. Our new poll, where the race there stands. The clash over Dr. Fauci, the president suggesting he could fire him after the election. And what the president is saying in defense of supporters who swarmed a Biden campaign bus. Also, with nearly 100 million early votes already cast, could it be an election night cliffhanger? The states where we could know first and where it could take days, even months. The president already threatening legal action to stop the count. On the eve of the election, COVID surging to all-time highs, nearly 100,000 cases in a day. Hospitals warning they may ration care. El Paso calling in a 4th mobile morgue, and massive parties over the weekend. Could they have been super spreaders? The deadly terror attack near a synagogue in Vienna. Shootouts in the streets. What we're now learning. Tensions running high, businesses boarded up ahead of potential unrest. How to deal with your election anxiety. And 3 days after that powerful earthquake, the miracle rescues.
This is NBC Nightly News. Decision 2020. Here is Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. Here we are now, just hours from Election Day 2020. As the nation closes in on 100 million early votes cast, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are tonight surgically trying to pick off the states that could push them over the line. Biden tonight, according to polls, holding a lead in key battleground states, but the margins are narrow. The president looking to close ground with a final pinch grounded in grievances and doubt about the election process itself. We have it all covered. Let's begin our coverage with Jeff Bennett. And Jeff, what is the president hoping for in these final hours?
Lester, President Trump's campaign is counting on a surge in Election Day turnout among his supporters to fuel the president's path to re-election. His campaign drawing confidence from the size of his crowds, despite polling showing him behind. President Trump crisscrossing the country tonight to close out the 2020 campaign.
North Carolina, thank you very much. We win Pennsylvania, we win the whole deal. You know that.
By the end of the night, the president will have logged nearly 2,500 miles, with rallies in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Battlegrounds he won in 2016, but where polls say the race is either tight or he's trailing. Part of the president's closing argument, a threat to fire Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Don't tell anybody, but let me wait till a little bit after the election.
That's after Fauci told the Washington Post about the pandemic. The Biden campaign is taking it seriously from a public health perspective, while the president's focus is reopening the country. Back on the trail, the president teeing up uncertainty over the election outcome, pushing the false argument that results not declared on election night are illegitimate.
We should know the result of the election on November 3rd, the evening of November 3rd. That's the way it's been, and that's the way it should be.
All that as the FBI tells NBC News it's investigating after Trump supporters surrounded a Biden campaign bus in Texas Friday. The president insisting his supporters were being helpful, not threatening.
You see the way our people, they were protecting his bus yesterday.
The president tweeting today they did nothing wrong. Republican Senator Marco Rubio backing him up.
Did you see it? All the cars on the road with the car. We love what they did.
A Biden campaign official says the vehicles tried to run the bus off the road. Tensions high as the president fights to the final moment to secure a second term. Jeff Bennett, NBC News, Traverse City, Michigan.
I'm Christy Welker. Tonight, Joe Biden closing out his campaign in battleground Pennsylvania, appearing with Lady Gaga.
You guys can own this election.
After hitting the key state of Ohio and again blasting the president over his handling of COVID-19 and the president's suggestion he may fire Dr. Anthony Fauci.
I got a better idea. Elect me and I'm going to hire Dr. Fauci. And we're going to fire Donald Trump.
Biden making 4 stops in Pennsylvania today, Kamala Harris with 5, while former President Obama going to Georgia and Florida to try to energize Black and Latino voters with turnout in some areas below expectations.
Tomorrow, after 4 years of failure, you have the power to change America.
But Pennsylvania will be key, and the polls here are tightening. Our new NBC News Marist poll showing Biden's lead shrinking to just 5 points, which is within the margin of error. Meanwhile, President Trump drawing tens of thousands of supporters to rallies here. Pennsylvania's Democratic Lieutenant Governor tweeting a photo of one packed Trump rally, warning Democrats that's not Photoshop. The president is popular in PA, urging them to vote, tweeting, "Bank your ballot." We spoke to critical voters in the Philadelphia suburbs, including supporters of the president.
What is the biggest issue for you?
Economy, really.
You think he's done a good job on the economy?
I do, yeah, absolutely.
And Biden.
Why Biden and Harris?
Because of what's going on in the world, the divisiveness, trying to entice the hateness, and it's just horrible. We need a change. The people are suffering.
And Kristen joined me now. Kristen, what expectations are the Biden campaign setting tonight?
Well, Lester, the Biden campaign insists Pennsylvania is not must win for them, but they are fighting so hard here because it is very difficult for President Trump to win re-election without winning Pennsylvania again. Biden will be back here tomorrow. Lester.
All right, Kristen, thanks very much. And we know that counting the vote might take days in some places, and state laws permit that. But as you heard, President Trump again suggested that counting should stop tomorrow. Tom Costello tonight with a reality check.
Never in the country's history has a winner been formally declared the night of the election. But with record numbers of voters, President Trump on Sunday falsely claimed votes should not be counted after Tuesday.
I think it's a terrible thing when people or states are allowed to tabulate ballots for a long period of time after the election is over.
But counting takes time, days, even weeks. And the president surely knows that. Here are the facts. 21 states and D.C. allow ballots postmarked by Election Day to be counted if they arrive after Election Day, including critical swing states Pennsylvania, Minnesota, North Carolina, and Ohio. But tonight, a big concern. The Postal Service, accused of slowing mail delivery to help President Trump, reports that on Saturday it moved only 62% of mailed-in ballots on time in central Pennsylvania and 64% in Atlanta, compared to a 95% overall on-time delivery in June. Some states are already counting millions of early votes, including Florida, Arizona, and North Carolina. Other battlegrounds like Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania can't begin counting until tomorrow. Pennsylvania's governor out with a new commercial trying to reassure voters.
It may take a little longer than we're used to, even a few days, but that's okay, because it's critical that your vote is counted.
Even veteran Republicans are concerned by the president's rhetoric.
Look, I'm a Republican. I agree with the president when he's right, but he's wrong about this. This type of rhetoric about rigged elections ultimately invites comparison to places like Russia, to places like Iran, places where they really do rig elections.
In fact, every state has its own deadline for certifying election results. The real deadline, December 14th. That's when state electors must cast their ballots in the Electoral College. Experts caution as states come in tomorrow night, they may trend blue or red, but all that matters is the final vote count, and they could all change their colors. Lester?
All right, Tom Costello, thanks. Let's bring in our political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. Chuck, how do these two candidates reach the prize, 270 electoral votes?
Well, in theory, there's a ton of ways for them to get there, but what we're really figuring out, there's really just two paths. There's a northern path and a southern path here. Watch our bars here as I move these states. For now, we're going to assume that Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan go Democrat. We're going to put Iowa and Ohio in the Republican column. And look what that leaves us here. You've got these 5 Sun Belt states plus Pennsylvania. And look at the importance of the Sun Belt to Donald Trump. Just one win by Biden, and he hits 270 or more. Arizona would do it. Texas would do it. Florida would do it, Georgia would do it, or North Carolina would do it. Just one. But if the president holds all the Sun Belt, then where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with Pennsylvania. And if you're trying to figure out why there's so much threat of lawsuit, about Pennsylvania is because they've done this path too. They've done these paths too. And each side gets stuck at times with the 20 electoral votes in Pennsylvania, Lester.
All right, Chuck, thanks very much. And for voters, the pandemic is front and center as it continues to explode across the country yet again, ravaging families and pushing hospitals to the brink. Here's Miguel Almaguer now on the alarming surge.
As our nation approaches a staggering 100,000 new infections a day, hospitals in states like Utah, overwhelmed by a flood of COVID cases, say they may have to soon ration care. In Wisconsin, where the positivity rate is roughly 30%, retired healthcare workers are being asked to return to the front lines. For nurses and doctors inside this ICU in South Dakota, every statistic is a patient. Deaths in this state have risen 52%.
As we're all trying to keep our cool on the outside, on the inside, we're like, got so many patients I need to see.
With the city of El Paso receiving its 4th mobile morgue after a surge in fatalities, scenes like these showing thousands partying on Halloween have first responders outraged. But smaller events, like a gathering inside a Vermont hockey rink, also have led to at least 89 infections, now spread across 18 towns. In St. Louis, LaWanda Griffin survived the virus, but lost her mother and 2 great-uncles to COVID.
Florida was the hardest thing.
On election eve, the pandemic and politics are colliding at polling sites. Experts say voting in person is as safe, if not safer, than going to the grocery store. Lester?
All right, Miguel, thank you. Breaking tonight, what authorities are calling a deadly terror attack in Vienna, Austria, that began near the city's central synagogue. Richard Engel now with late details.
Police engaged in a gun battle in central Vienna tonight and came under fire themselves. Police say several gunmen, you can see them here, dressed in white, carrying rifles, opened fire in 6 different locations. Austria's chancellor calling it a terror attack. The shootings were centered around the city's main synagogue, closed at the time. The area is also full of bars and restaurants, crowded tonight before a COVID lockdown begins tomorrow.
People were sitting outside and he was shooting at the people.
Tensions were already high as jihadist attacks are on the rise in Europe, including just last week in France. Lester?
Disturbing developments. All right, Richard, thank you. Tonight, President Trump is holding a rally in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where protests erupted after the police shooting of Jacob Blake in August. Now it's looking more like this election could be won or lost in suburbs like Kenosha. But is the president's law and order message resonating with voters? Here's Gabe Gutierrez with that.
Tonight in battleground Wisconsin, the fight for the suburbs is underway. President Trump rallying supporters in Kenosha. More than 2 months since the unrest following the police shooting of Jacob Blake.
What happened to downtown Kenosha happened to me in my backyard. Had law and order been called in sooner, probably we would not have lost lives.
In his battleground blitz over the last week, the president has been hammering home his campaign theme of law and order.
Antifa and the anarchists, they view the suburbs as next. I'm saving suburbia. We believe in law and order. Suburban women, please love me, please love me.
In 2016, suburban women supported Hillary Clinton over Mr. Trump by 11 points. A recent poll has Joe Biden up 19 points among the same group.
The simple truth is, Donald Trump failed to protect America. So now he's trying to scare America.
Across the country, major cities are preparing for potential violence after the election, from New York to Philadelphia to Los Angeles. Even the White House plans to install a non-scalable fence. In Kenosha, downtown businesses have been boarded up for months.
What worries you most about the president being reelected?
Basically, the last 4 years happening again. He's not trustworthy.
4 years ago, President Trump won Wisconsin by less than 23,000 votes. Even though he trails in the polls here, his supporters warn not to count him out again. Lester?
All right, Gabe Gutierrez in Kenosha, thank you. Another all-important block of voters, African Americans, with the number of black Americans eligible to vote reaching a record 30 million this year. NBC's Blaine Alexander on some of what's weighing into that critical vote.
There's the South Carolina Biden supporter with everything on the line.
Our livelihoods, our well-being, our everyday is at stake in this election.
You know, people say, well, vote like your life depends on it. No, we're voting because our lives depend on it.
The first-time voter in Minnesota working to get out the vote for President Trump.
I am conservative because I am Christian, and as of right now, my political affiliations or my views align with the Republican Party.
And the Georgia voter, driven by two things:
racial tensions and the pandemic.
And that's what's bringing you out to vote.
Yes.
Now both parties are scrambling to court that crucial black vote.
Black lives matter, period.
To every black American, vote for Trump.
More than a third of America's black voters live in some of the country's most competitive states, including Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio.
And the biggest concentration is right here in Georgia, where black voters comprise 32% of the electorate.
I wanted just to come out and just do what I can.
With 30 million eligible black voters, more than ever before, they could sway the election, particularly in those swing states. It's why Kayla Bino spent $600 to fly from Baltimore to Fort Lauderdale when her Florida absentee ballot didn't show up.
I would not have been able to forgive myself if I didn't vote in this election. I honestly feel that the stakes are far too high to be complacent.
Now, all eyes are on Tuesday and turnout. Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Atlanta.
In just 60 seconds, election stress disorder. Yes, it's a real thing. We're going to tell you how to recognize it, how to deal with it. With just hours until the polls open, there are a lot of Americans feeling it tonight. Election anxiety. Stephanie Goss now and what you can do to cope with it.
The election is coming at us fast and at times angry. The campaigns, the ads, the Twitter feeds, polls and pundits, and finger wagging.
No peace! No justice! No peace!
The voting lines are long and there are fears of unrest. All of it while the pandemic only gets worse. No wonder there is more stress than ever.
I'm seeing a tremendous amount of people dealing with stress, anxiety, panic-type symptoms as the election gets closer.
Doctors even have a name for it: election stress disorder. Take a deep breath. There are ways to make it better. Limit social media and TV, avoid political conversations that can sometimes get ugly, and get some exercise. A walk can do wonders. Psychologists say look for signs that you may need more help, having trouble getting out of bed or not eating. Doctors and therapists are doing more virtual visits, making it safer and easier to schedule appointments. Finally, resist the urge to worry about what can't be controlled or what hasn't happened. Instead, go vote. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
All right, up next, will Americans trust the election results? The incredible moment caught on camera. Rescuers pulling a 3-year-old girl out alive after she was trapped for 3 days in the rubble from that deadly earthquake in Turkey. Workers calling it a miracle. Also rescued today a 14-year-old girl. Back home, as millions get ready to head to the polls just hours from now, an alarming number of Americans are losing faith in the country's election system. Cynthia McFadden now on why trust is plummeting and what can be done about it.
The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged.
Is by the chicanery going on relative to polling places.
Little surprise, perhaps, the nation's trust in our voting system at the core of the American democracy is at an all-time low. Polls show over 40% of Americans are not confident the election results will be counted accurately.
I just don't feel like our votes matter. You know, I feel like it's rigged.
A democracy is like Tinkerbell. If people don't believe in it, it dies.
David Litt is a former speechwriter for President Barack Obama.
American democracy isn't over, but it's under threat in a way it has not been in most Americans' lifetimes.
How important is trust to the functioning of our democracy?
Oh, in a democracy, trust is probably the most precious resource.
Historian Doris Kearns Goodwin says even in some of the country's darkest days, trust was high. 77% of people believed government would do the right thing. It began to slide downward in the 1960s. It has cratered now.
Now, when you take that same poll, it's down to 20%.
What was different then? Consider FDR's speech after Pearl Harbor.
A date which will live in infamy.
FDR said to the people, I have absolute confidence in your ability to hear the worst, but you have to have absolute confidence that the government is keeping nothing from you. If that bond can be created, then the level of trust can go back up again. I think this huge vote we're seeing is the beginning of that process of rebuilding the trust and mobilization of the spirit of the American people. I gotta believe that, I do.
First steps. Cynthia McFadden, NBC News.
In a moment, I'll have some final thoughts on this pivotal moment. Finally tonight, at about this time tomorrow evening, the first polls in the 2020 election will begin to close. If that just gave you a knot in your stomach, it's okay. Me too. Let's face it, this campaign has often felt like a powder keg with a fuse burning down to November 3rd. And it's allowed our minds to sometimes drift into dark places about potential for violence and whether the outcome will be accepted. This is a deep breath moment. We will need all of our collective patience and critical thinking skills tomorrow. Yes, democracy is messy, but we've got to let it work. If not for ourselves, then for our children, who you know are watching us. That's Nightly News for this Monday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
Newly released video of a medical scare in a high school cafeteria. Deputy Pedro Colon performing CPR for several minutes after a student suffered a seizure and collapsed. The teen, recovering and alert, sat up until paramedics took him to the hospital. That student then returned to the school, showing gratitude to the deputy in person. Dueling town halls, what would have been the second debate tonight will be separate events on separate networks happening at the same time. President Trump and Vice President Biden less
Can't wait to try it. I'm gonna try the fake white bag. Jeez. It's really hard to do the right timing to fake the bag. Oh wow. Georgia. Georgia. It's okay. Okay, gotta work. That's it for now.